My name is Monk Rowe over at the Phileas Jazz Archive. I'm very happy to have percussionist Victor Rendon with me. How'd I do?
That's great.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I was just overwhelmed with the amount of information yesterday from the clinic you did with your
I could tell. I was
cohort.
watching you. You caught my eye.
Yeah, that percussive music just seems to, it's like a magnet.
Yes.
It draws you in, and it's mystifying to me, but it's wonderful.
Yes, yes. And all your questions make a lot of sense because all those questions, or questions that I asked myself as I was learning and still learning, it's an endless lifetime study, all this percussion, Afro-Caribbean percussion, it's just one after another. And there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been discovered yet, by the general public, in South America in particular.
I was wondering about that when Cascadu was talking about the specific rhythms that are related to specific deities, and where those connections came from. How far back did it go? Is it possible to know why this rhythm connected with this
Yes.
spiritual being?
Yeah, that's a good question because the music, the Bata music that we played for you yesterday, it's the origins is from Nigeria, Yoruba land, and if you listen to, I've listened to the Bata drumming that's still in existence there, and a lot of it doesn't sound like what has evolved in Cuba and the rest of the, like in the United States. I recognized a few things like Ocho C, and also they have like 4 drums instead of 3. We're playing on 3. And one of the guys, I'm not sure which one, because I don't know that much to be honest with you about the African Bata drumming, but he's playing 2. So it has evolved. Now how the rhythms, you were asking about the rhythms, I recognized 1 or 2 and the others was totally different. So it's something that developed here in the New World, I think. The Bata drumming, from what I've read, came around early, I don't want to say a year because I'm not sure, around the early 1800s, and from a pair of slaves that were in Cuba, and it evolved from there. But I cannot say specifically why the rhythms developed the way they are.
Right.
Yeah, I wish, that's a good research
Yes, it
project.
is. Someone's PhD,
Yeah,
for sure.
or a good doctoral, dissertation.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
There was a great moment yesterday. Someone asked a question about how much of what you're doing is improvised. And I believe the answer was, well, some, but most of this is fairly specific.
Yes, yes, yes.
So then the 3 of you played one of your rhythms, and it was going on for a while. And there was a moment where you flashed this big smile. Something happened, and you just had this great smile, and you were looking at the other 2 fellas. And
Yeah.
I wondered at the time, what just happened?
I think I know that moment. I slapped the left side of my left side.
Yeah.
I was playing to a leg one. If this is what I'm, and it was an inflection coming from me. It was not necessarily something that's had to be done. So I was playing this rhythm. That's basic. Like I was talking about the language, just learn the basic. But then I did it. And Cascadu responded by sort of laughing or smiling at me.
Yeah.
And I think I looked at him and I
Yeah,
said,
okay.
we had that little moment there. I think that's what you're talking about. Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens in jazz a lot,
Yes.
too,
Yes.
when
yeah.
someone plays something, and
Yeah.
sometimes the response doesn't necessarily have to be an exact copy.
Mhm.
Well, you're playing that, I can play that too.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because that can get obnoxious after a while if it goes on for too long.
Yes. 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 Sir.
But that communication, that
Yes,
interaction
yes,
is...
yes. And again, like I was the lady who asked whether it's improvised or said, And I said, yes, they are set, but you can have variations within that language. Like right now we're talking, I speak with a Spanish accent, you speak with your background accent, but it's still the same language. We can have different inflections, but it's still the basic language is still there. You can move it around a little bit. You say tomato, I say tomate, or we go outside, it's tomato. But
Right.
It's still the same language. We understand it.
How do you teach what seems to be very complex rhythms and many rhythms? Where do you start with a novice?
Very good question. In Cuba, it's by rote. It's an oral tradition, and I've been there. And what they do, and the way I've seen it happen here in the United States, in New York City, the novice will just basically sit there, or maybe stand against the wall and just listen. Again, they just pick it up by ear. And back in the old days, they would do that maybe for a couple of years or so. And if you were not an annoyance, they would let you stay there. And then maybe they would let you play. And like at a ceremony, a lot of times the teacher will go to the beginner, and he'll play the drum this way so that he can follow him. Or they'll get behind you and tap it on your shoulder. Oh. I learned differently because, being a percussionist that can read music, I looked at transcriptions, or I transcribed it myself. So I will actually write things out, and then I'll memorize it. But I find that reading them, looking at the paper, reading is not the same, because the sooner you can play it by memory, then it becomes a part of you. Because for many years, like what you saw yesterday, I would read it, like like the newspaper. But it wasn't until I put the papers away that I started to feel it spiritually within myself.
I see. Would notated music for the bata have two staves? Would it be, because you're playing two?
Yes, it's
skins.
like the way I write it. There's no standardized way.
No.
I write the left hand on a thinking treble clef. I write the left hand on the E, the fifth space.
I see.
And I write the right hand on the F space.
I'm thinking now. The right hand plays the lower tone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So E, F E. And if I have like a muffled tone, I'll put it on the G space. But that's my notation. It's not necessarily standardized. Going back to the teaching, I do have a group of students come in on Sundays, and I'm teaching them by rote, pretty much. Even the ones that can read music. Once in a while, I'll take out a sheet of paper and I'll show them. This is what it looks like. But for the most part, my emphasis is that if you come in every week, you'll get it. You cannot go backwards. You can only go forwards.
Okay. It reminds me of one of our professors here has a gamelan orchestra, and she teaches students to play that music, and
yes.
no music involved, no written music.
Yes.
They're learning their parts by ear
Yeah.
and muscle memory, I guess.
Yes.
Which is a really good way to learn music,
Yes.
I think.
Yes. I found that after a while, I was always afraid that because of the EA drum, the bigger drum, is the one that calls you, and I found out that after a while my hands would just respond to what was being called. And it was like, whoa, I remembered, but it was just my hands remembering what to do. You mentioned that the muscle memory, and it just sort of kicks in after a while.
Yeah.
And we also have certain sounds to represent the right hand, like on the small drum, ki, la, ki, la. Ki is my right hand, and la is my left hand. So we learn it, what's the word for that type of thing? Phonetically? Not phonetic.
Phonetic? Well, that'll
There's
do.
a word for it, yeah. But you know what I mean? Where
Yes.
the syllables, like in Indian drumming, they represent certain sounds.
Yeah, that's right with the tabla.
Yes, yeah. So I use that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Kila, kila. Or clean is playing the both hands is the same. Clean, clean, kila, clean, kila, clean, kila, clean, kila. I just did Hugun. And that's the way I teach, Well, that's the way, that's the standard way to teach it.
Nice.
Yes.
It seems, yeah, I think I told you yesterday that most musicians in this country can get through a lifetime of gigs, and their Latin repertoire consists of "Girl from Ipanema"
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
maybe one other tune.
Yeah.
But when you're playing for dancers who know what they're doing,
Mhm.
that's
Yes, yes.
and the tempos seem extremely important.
Yes.
What distinguishes a mambo from a cha-cha?
Correct. Yes. It took me a long time to internalize that, because we have terms like mambo, we have cha-cha-cha, we have son montuno, guaracha. What is all this? And a lot of it is the same rhythm, but at a slower tempo. Like a mambo might be here, one, but then if you slow it down, that becomes a son montuno. It just feels differently. Again, the word mambo is used very loosely. Tito Puente had his mambos again, like what we were doing during rehearsal yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But then Perez Prado, that was a mambo too, which is more like a cha-cha. But it didn't have the piano. It didn't have that. It was like felt more like in two. So it takes a long time to learn what it is.
Yeah, you said something.
Sometimes.
You said something about these terms get confusing over the years, and
Yes.
you mentioned the rumba.
Yes, yes.
And I had a great example of that when one of these dance instructors that we play for said, "You guys need to learn more cha-chas like Billie Jean."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Michael Jackson's Billie Jean?" And she said, "Yes, a cha-cha like that." So she's calling that song a cha-cha.
Uh-huh. I can see why, because you can superimpose the cha-cha over it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know where he's coming from.
All right, I
The same tempo. Yes.
I'm going to
exactly.
take a lesson from that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're trying to
Yeah.
how do I nail this cha-cha rhythm?
Yeah.
And tempo especially. So if you
And the rumba, that was a label, RHUMB. That was confusing for me in my younger days, because here I am learning rumba, RUMBA, the traditional folkloric way. And then you have the rumbas of Xavier Cugat, and all that from back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I finally realized it was just a term, a label that they put on the music.
Okay, see.
And like where I come from, it was música tropical, tropical music. And later on in the 60s, the term salsa came into the scene, and now it's called salsa. So it's like a blanket generic term for the music,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not necessarily a rhythm,
Yeah. The rhythms that really, got my heart going yesterday were those 6/8
Uh-huh.
things, and I think it's such a powerful feeling because you can feel it in 2,
Yes,
you
yes.
can feel it in 6,
Yes, yes, yes,
and
yes,
you can
yes.
move your body in different ways to it.
Mhm. Yes, yes. Like we did Rumba Colombia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, But then the quinto player is going, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1. It's all in, like in improvisation. It's in 2,
Mm-hmm.
so it's in a duple feel against the 6/8. So it's, and also if we have the clave that's a 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can do the other part instead of doing this. I can go. That's in 2. So you have all this interplay, and it's really interesting. And again, it took me a long time to really understand it, because my mind wouldn't accept it. Because being a school musician, no, that cannot be.
No, you don't learn this overnight. Ay. And you spent some time as a band leader What was that experience like?
Yeah. Well, I'm still a band leader.
Yes.
We're playing today. As a matter of
Yes,
fact.
right.
Yes.
What you had a Rodriguez Rendon
Oh, you know about
Latin
that.
Jazz
Okay.
Orchestra.
That was my first band in New York City. I think we formed it in 1990. We formed the band because we were playing in this other band, and I won't say the name because I won't, insult. We were playing with this older gentleman, and he had this concept of having a small big band, but he was so disorganized. The music wasn't quite there, and then you have 15 people, and he would go around let everybody take a solo, which could be a real drag right after 40 minutes or so. So then we said, me and Armando said, we can do better than this. Plus we can write our own arrangements. So we formed the Armando Rodriguez Victor Rendon Latin Jazz Orchestra, Rowe, right? And we recorded our first album in 1992, came out in 1993. Juarez, I don't know if you have that, which I'll get to you. Then we did our second CD, came out in 1998, and that's a very nice CD, Havana Blues. Have you seen that one?
No.
I'll have to get it to you.
Great.
Chico Farrell wrote for the arrangements for that. It was two big band sessions, one big band sessions with two tunes, and then a smaller group, 4-horn things that he did with us. And I wrote a couple of things, and Armando did the same ways. That's a very nice album, Havana Blues. And that was it for that band. We're still friends, but we parted our ways. We teach now together.
What are some of the things you learned as being a band leader?
As a band leader, you have to be very well organized. With a big band now in particular, I mean, just putting the music in order sometimes. I go to, every time we have a gig, I don't depend on the musicians to do it for me, because you call it out and then, I can't find it, or or that paper gets lost or something, or it gets detached.
Misfiled, yes.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. So I go through the books. That might take me anywhere from an hour to 2 hours just to make sure that the books are set. So I have to know, I have to file all the music. I have at least 80 arrangements in the book right now, but I can't carry all the music with me, so I have to decide what to play on a monthly basis.
Before you leave home.
Yes, so that I don't have to carry everything. I have to make sure that I communicate and make it known what I expect from my band members. Like today, for example, I sent out an email, please meet the bus at 10 a.m. We leave at 10:30, not 11, not 11:30, in a nice way, but in a business type of way.
Sure.
If you do it consistently, they get the message, so that's very important. So organization, I think, is one of the main things. And if you get good musicians, the music will take care of itself. I'm not worried about that, That's the easy part.
Indeed. What do you do if, you're trying to gather 15, 16 musicians or more on a particular date? Do you have subs if you need to?
Yes, we have a pool of subs. Again, I depend on them to send me subs because I can go crazy, especially if they call me in the middle of the day and I have to get 3 or 4 subs. I just, I'll pull my hair out. So I put it on them. Sometimes I do, of course, but if they give me a couple of weeks' notice or so, but if it's within the same week, I expect them to get a sub for me. I have my core people, and then we have a list of subs that they can call, which they've provided over the years. So that works out very nicely. As a matter of fact, that happened for this particular gig where we have about 3 or 4 subs, that are coming in. But they played with the band before, so it's not a problem. And they're very good, excellent musicians.
I would imagine you got to have a bass player who really knows this music.
Yes.
Because the first time I tried to at least absorb some of this Latin music, and much of it where the bass is anticipating.
Yes.
And it just seemed so incorrect.
Yeah, right.
We're used to jazz, we're the walking bass, we're hitting the downbeats. Even if it's a funky thing, usually it's...
Yeah. Well, that happened yesterday. The young man caught on very quickly. But you know, I had to tell him, you know, gung, king, gung, gung. And then he went down to one, king, 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 which is good too. That's an older style, as I mentioned to him, and that worked out very nicely what he was doing. But yes, you have to be very knowledgeable. I have a bass player that played with Tito Puente for many years, and he played with Ruben Blades. I don't know if you know about that particular name, but he's very, very experienced in the field for the past 50 years or so. And then the one I have today, he couldn't make it because he already had a gig. I have Ian Stewart, so I think he's come here. He told me he's from here.
Oh.
He's a young man, early 30s. He's got a lot of experience already.
Oh,
he wrote a book with Benito, what's his name, John Benitez, on Latino bass playing. So he's very knowledgeable. So he plays with the band periodically. So yes, and also the same thing with the piano players.
Oh yeah.
They have to learn how to know how to play with the percussion and the rhythm and the bass player. The one that I'm not very good is the guitar. I have to learn more because the guitar is kind of tricky because they have to play with the piano, but not necessarily the same thing. So how do you do it without getting in the way? So that's one thing that I haven't looked into, you know, much. You know, I depend on them to sort of do it if I happen to use a guitar player.
How does your percussion fit into swing music?
It can. I'm sure you're familiar. Like, let's say, instead of playing straight eights, like the conga 1 and 2 and 3, and you just swing it. And that's one way you could get around it. The bongos, instead of going
Okay.
and that's been done over the years. Yeah, it's
Yeah, Nat King Cole
yes.
used to
With
have.
Candido, I believe, right? I'm not sure.
What's that?
I think Candido did some recordings with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one way to adapt. I didn't pay attention to that. I thought it was something important. And a gentleman, I forget the name, wrote a book about it. He did a lot of research, and he called me for my input. And I really didn't have much input to give him because I had never really thought about it. But he did like a whole thing with a discography, and it's really interesting. But it's basically based on that. Just swinging those ace notes. And that's what I was afraid of yesterday. Chumbo, my conga player, we heard you guys playing from outside. He says, they're swinging the eighth notes. And I was like, really? Okay. But then when I got inside, it was not being swung. So.
You know what happened? They listened to a recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they were doing it before?
I did not hear them before, but I know before you worked on it yesterday, they put a recording of it on. Do you write with Finale or anything like that?
I use Finale.
Yeah.
Yes. Some people say Sibelius is better. I don't know.
They do say that, but I'm a Finale guy.
Yeah, yes. So I've done it for about over 20 years. So I'm not going to change that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have physical issues with what you do? I mean, so much of it is muscles and not only that, moving equipment.
Yes.
Is it trying on your body?
As I get older, yes. I mean, I got up this morning. I got up around 5:30 because I was going to meet the guys for breakfast, and then I decided to stay at my hotel, and I just did exercises with my hands, you know, on a pad for about an hour and a half. As I get older, if I don't move my hands, I start getting stiff. So yes, I do. As I get older, I'm beginning to experience. But I think that happens to everybody. So yes, I have to be on top of it. I can't just lay off the instrument. I have to, be moving my hands and my body. It's getting harder and harder to move the drums. I started off as a drum set player, and now and with this band I actually was playing drum set in the very beginning, and then for some reason I let another drummer play for a while until he left, to move on to other things, and I didn't move back to the drum set because I find it easier to move the timbales, You know, it's just getting. If I have to move a whole drum set now, it's like, oh, I'd still do it, but it's not when I was young, you know.
And the group tonight does not have a drum set player.
No drum set player. Yes.
So, is there a part in what you do, or your percussion mates, that takes the place of like the hi-hat? Or is it not that specific?
Because yes and no. Because if you look at a typical Latino band like the Puente band, the Machir band, they never had drummers anyway, drum set players.
Right.
So everything's taken care of. If you want to equate the hi-hat to something, it would be the size of the timbales, because it's a metal shell that would take the place of it. Because if I was playing drums, I would simply be imitating something that the timbal is doing or complementing it. So it's not necessary. That's why I decided not to replace the drummer. Because after the drummer left to go on some boat cruise gig, you know, for the next 2 years, I tried some other drummers, and it was just difficult to find a drummer that was willing to come to rehearsals, do the gigs, you know, which most of the time don't pay that well, and then deal with stylistic differences. You know, it's hard to find that a good drummer that can do that. So I then, you know, and then we played for a couple of years. I said, you know something, we don't need a drummer. We're self-contained in what we do, unless we do like a rap thing, which we're not going to do anyway, or a funk thing that we would need a drummer. You know.
I see.
In that
One less
case,
person to pay too.
That's right. There's one less mouth to feed. Exactly.
How's the work scene changed in New York?
In New York, drastically. At least I'm talking for Latin music and Latin jazz. When I first got to New York in 1980, there was a lot of work in everything. Like hotels had bands, you know. We had the Rainbow Room and clubs where you could play. You could go with your band, and you know you would get gigs, and you would make anywhere. They never paid a lot, anywhere from $50 to $100, but $100 back in 1980 was not bad. You know, 50 was like the minimum. I remember playing at Mikhail's. I remember playing at Misiones, right next to the Blue Note. There was wedding gigs, you know, parties. All of it, most of it has died out to the point that there's only a few clubs where you can actually play, and usually it's for the door. So it's really, really. And this is New York City, so it's not for me. It's it doesn't look, you know. It hasn't, in my opinion, it's not looking very good. You know.
Do you know why?
Some. I first saw it in the mid 80s, around 80, well, close to the 90s, around 88. I used to play a lot of cabaret, you know, like I would be house drummer in places where we would back up singers. And the city, I don't remember who was the mayor. I think it might have been Giuliani, Rudy Giuliani, or friend, who they started to enforce a law where you cannot have a live band within a certain amount of feet from a residential area. So all of a sudden they started enforcing a law where you couldn't have a band. So what they started to do, they started laying off the musicians, and they would call the singers would put on a show with what they call pista, or a soundtrack. You know, the music minus the singer.
Right.
That's when I first saw it, and they never quite recovered from that.
Yeah.
I guess the club owners realized they could get away with it, and that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, the DJ and live performers, I've kind of.
Yes. And people seem to respond, talking about DJs, they seem to respond more to DJs than to the bands. Every year we, at Lehman College where I teach, we play for a Christmas party. We have the full big band, and some people will dance, you know, and they'll look interested. As soon as we're off, the DJ will come on. It's like ants coming to the
I had the
dance floor.
same experience. the last wedding I played.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that. You know, it's like Maybe it's the MP3 generation. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I cannot say.
I think it's boom, boom, boom.
Yes, 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 yes. I remember one time playing with, it was me, it was like top musicians, except for myself. I was the young one. It was Manny Duran, who played with the Machito Orchestra, Eddie, I forget, Martinez, who played with the Chico Ferro, everybody, Gato Barbieri, Patato, Congas. The bass player was Victor Venegas, a veteran from the scene. We were playing. Midway, the coordinator stopped us, paid us, sent us home. They put a boombox in the middle of the room, and people again just started dancing. So they didn't even appreciate the Latino jazz that we were playing. It was like, we were top musicians, but that's where we're at, I think. Or that's where we're headed. Hopefully not, but I've seen it happen.
Let's suppose you went to a party and someone asks you what you do, and well, I play a lot of Latin jazz, and that person said, what makes Latin jazz different from jazz?
Okay. We have jazz the way we know it, with the swing stuff, the bebop, which I wanted to be a jazz drummer, by the way, first before I ever got into the Latin thing. So in college, I was into Mel Lewis, Buddy Rich, of course, Stan Ken. I went to North Texas State University.
Oh, okay.
So I was studying that and playing on the lap and some of that. So I've always loved straight ahead jazz, and of course I used to listen to all the bebop stuff, Miles Davis and all that stuff. But then one day, somebody in the dorm heard me playing some Mexican music, Pérez Prado, and Sonora Matancera, and he took me to his room and said, listen to this. He put some Ray Barretto, which is more like straight ahead salsa, but it just blew my mind away because of the rhythm. It was so strong. And then I started to hear like the bands of Machito, who did a lot of what we call now Latin jazz. For me, it's the marriage of both. Because for instance, in straight ahead Latino, like a dance tune, it might have one chord, like we did yesterday. It might have a 1-4-5 progression, or 2-5-1, or 1-6-2-5. Basic chord structure. And of course, jazz, it still has that, but it might have so many other chords, especially like a ballad. So it's the marriage of the harmonies of jazz and the Latino rhythm. It's not straight ahead just ding, 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 which of course people like Edward Jones can do a lot. But Latino, we have that strong rhythm, and I think that's what makes it Latino jazz. My band, I try my best to keep the tradition. I don't like for it to get too what's the word, too out there. I keep it pretty much in a box, like traditional. But then we have the arrangements on top of it, which are like jazz harmonies. And you'll be there tonight, I'll see you.
Yeah.
And you'll hear it. So
okay.
So for me, that's Latin jazz. Yes. And like the big band, I've always wanted to have a big band because I saw the connection between Stan Ken, Woody Herman, and Tito Puente and Machito, because they took the same format.
Oh.
They didn't quite have the maybe. I think Puente had like four saxophones, maybe 2 bones. I don't remember exactly. 3 or 4 trumpets. Not a full size big band. I think Machito had like 4 trumpets, 4 saxes, no bones for many times. But it was still the same format. So I saw the connection between the two, between straight ahead jazz, big band, and the Latino stuff. So that's for me, that's Latin jazz.
Okay, good answer. Your bandmates speak of this music with great reverence for its history and lineage, and yesterday's lecture demonstration was a lot about spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
But the music exists in the spiritual realm as well as the secular realm.
Yes, yes.
Is it, what might happen, I'll rephrase, would there be something that a person could do with this music that would be irreverent and frowned upon? If you're playing music that's connected with spirituality and deities,
Mm-hmm.
can it be abused?
It can be. We've come a long way in that. Back in the, I'll go back to the early 1900s. Fernando Ortiz, I don't know if you know that name. He was a Cuban musicologist, anthropologist, who was actually the first to bring out the bata drumming to the public, because back then it was like sort of like secretive. Cascadeu spoke about you could be, actually, punished for playing those drums in public, but it was also in respect to the deities, and even it went on also up to the 80s. When I first came to New York in 1980, I tried to get people to teach me how to play the drums, the bata drums, and people didn't want to do that, because unless they knew you, you had to sort of hang around with them until you got their confidence and they would start showing you. The way they got around it, starting going back again, I'm sort of jumping around.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was 1936. Instead of bringing out the religious drums, the sacred drums, the batura drums, they made what we call abericola. They're not sacred. Because it is believed that the sacred drums they do something to it. I'm not even sure I should say it. There's something inside the drum that's called ania, and that's believed to be a living entity in itself. So you're not supposed to bring those drums out into the open. So if somebody did that, yes, that would be an abuse of of that culture, of maybe even the deities. So you don't want to do that. Also, those drums, when they're used in a religious ceremony, they're supposed to be put away at least before dark. So you might play from 12 to 6 or whenever, and then you put they're never supposed to touch the floor. And I could go on with things, but those drums are not to be played in public, and they cannot be handled by just anyone.
Oh.
You have to go through a ritual where you, and again, Cascadeu mentioned it yesterday, where you become Omo Anya, where they ask the deities whether this person is accepted to do this, and then they give you permission or not give you permission. So that's part of it. So yes, there are certain things, but again, if you're using non-sacred drums, you can do just about anything. In my opinion, I still respect, I wouldn't put it in an environment where it might be disrespectful to the culture or the deities. I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure how I could put that. As a rhythm to a legua, if I put it in an environment where it's counterproductive, I won't do that, just out of respect.
If you think of the Miami Sound Machine, or some novelty hits like the Macarena.
Yes, yes. You could do it.
It's like, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yes. As long as it's not disrespecting the culture or the tradition or the drums or the rhythms themselves, you can do just about.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you can do just about anything. Oh yes, women are not supposed to touch the sacred drums also. There's a whole thing about that. But as they get older now, I hear it has to do something with menopause and
Oh.
I mean, the period.
I see.
Because blood is not good when you're around the deities,
Yes.
So supposedly they feed on they feed on that. So I shouldn't be talking too much about that, but
Well,
yes.
it's part of the
Yeah,
culture,
yes,
and
yes.
I was sort of thinking after I was learning about this stuff yesterday
Yeah.
that all religions have they have icons.
Mhm.
You know, the Catholic religion has its
Yes,
icon.
yeah.
It has symbols. It has
Yes,
physical
yes, yes,
movements,
yes.
and the religion that you're talking about
Yes,
has
yes.
its
Yes,
drums
exactly,
and
exactly, yeah, yeah. But as long as if you play them like a student of mine asked me, because he's learning bata at Lehman, and he comes every Sunday to me where we have the class. He's learning very quickly. He says, "Do I have to be part of the religion?" No, you don't. You can play as much as you want. Later on when you reach that stage, you have to make a decision how far you want to take it. As far as that spiritual side of it is involved. But it doesn't have to be. You can play the drums as much as they want. A woman can learn as much as she wants. And there's no restrictions on that.
hmm Is it a healthy religion, or is it shrinking in numbers, or is it?
I think it's growing.
You think it's
It's a
growing?
very. I'm not a santero, by the way. But
Mhm.
I'm like sort of 101.
Okay.
uh, it's a very open religion. It doesn't reject other religion. Like it's always been synchronized with the
Catholicism.
Christian religions.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So like if I can go to a ceremony and pay my respects there, then I can walk into a Catholic church. It's not a problem.
I see.
So it's very open-minded, and it's based mostly on self-improvement. Like how can you be a better person, and that's what they profess. That's all other religions, but this one in particular, it's I see that a lot where I'm going to do this for a deity because I want to see how I can improve myself, and that's the whole idea behind it, and hopefully it'll stay that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All three of you gentlemen seem at ease with others and fairly peaceful.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what makes you angry.
What makes me angry? uh,
It could be a musical thing, or perhaps.
for me, disrespect.
Mhm.
When somebody talks to me in a certain way, and there's no reason for it, that makes me angry. Like you're very respectful.
Mhm.
You haven't said any. Students can be disrespectful. They don't make me angry, but they get annoying. It's like don't do that. It's like when you talk to me, at least talk to me. You can disagree with me, but don't disrespect me. That's my philosophy with life. Pretty much, just treat others the way you expect to be treated, and if they do it in a negative way, I'll most of the time I'll call them out on that. Just don't talk to me that way or whatever. Don't treat me that way, and I'll do the same.
Good.
That's like my prayer for the week. On Mondays I do a certain thing, a little ritual, and I always say, I ask the higher beings, including God, help me. I ask for guidance, and I always say, help me, guide me in saying the right things and doing the right things, so that I can not only help myself and improve myself, but help others in the process. And that's what I live by on a weekly basis. I say that I do that prayer at least once on Mondays before I go anywhere.
I think your students are probably lucky that they have you.
Well, I hope so. Yes.
Are you an optimist about the future of our country?
Yes. Yes, I am. Not to get political, but the things that are happening right now, in other countries, they would when you have conflicts, they assassinate you, or they'll kill you. Here, it's in check. I think the balances are working for us. It's a struggle, but I think in the end we're going to come out good. So yes, I'm optimistic that things will work out in this world, in this country in particular. And yes, I am.
Okay,
optimistic.
I'm glad to hear that. We'll go back to a big rewind. Do you recall a specific moment or moments when you were young where you heard something? Well, you mentioned when you were at North Texas State, but even before that, was there something that said, wow, what is that? I need to do that, or I want to find out more about that?
Yes. I remember a recording, which I'm sure you've heard, Don Ellis live at the Fillmore East.
Yeah.
I remember getting up in the morning because I was in the what was that music club where you got records in the mail?
Columbia
Record
yes.
Club. So I got my record for the month, and I got my Don Ellis, and it was like 7:30 in the morning. I put it on. And all this drumming and all this odd meters, and I was like, whoa, my God, and I was like a 15, 16-year-old, and that really hit me. And I wore out that album. I loved it, So yeah, that's one of the ones that it really changed my life, because it wanted me to have something, and it made me feel good when I heard that album. Yes. And I seeing the Stan Ken band back in 1967 or so. I was only about 11 or 12 back then, and to see these guys, playing there and seeing, Ken, doing his thing that really hit me. So seeing live music, we used to have I'm from Corpus Christi, so we used to have the Corpus Christi Jazz Festival.
I see.
It was like in June or July. So seeing these musicians really made a big impression on me, and it made me want to play. Which is why, going back to like the MP3 stage, where I think a lot of young people are not seeing that type of playing anymore. They don't see bands, and I think it has an effect on how they respond to music. Could be, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's easy to sound like, these aren't the good old days. We had the good old days.
Yeah.
But I think the process of going to a record store, hearing something on the radio and seeking it out, and then buying a physical product,
Yes.
at least for our generation,
Yes.
worked for us.
I remember getting my first teacher had the Buddy Rich Swingin' New Big Band, which I'm sure you have. And I ordered it. I had to go to the store and order it because they didn't have it. And then I got the swinging big face.
Big swing face.
Big swing face.
Yes.
But I had to order it. The guy would look it up in this big fat catalog and get the number. And I had to wait a couple of weeks to get it. But then you got that record and you cherished it.
Indeed.
And you heard it for the next 5 years. Almost every day.
Yeah. So
I think those days are gone, because now we get too much information, and you cannot even listen to all that information. You don't have enough time.
Right. This is sort of a historical question. I don't know if you'll have an opinion on it. Jelly Roll Morton, the early jazz pianist, was quoted when he said, people would say, well, what is jazz? And he would say, it's this and that. But it has to have a Spanish tinge to it. And I always wondered what he meant by that. And I wonder if you have an opinion on it. To me, when he says Spanish, I think he means the music comes from south of our border.
There was a lot of I'm sure you have that book, The Land Tinge. Who was the author of that? I don't remember, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And it talks a lot about the Caribbean influence. It has like what they called that Tsenkio rhythm. So you can put it in clave. A lot of it has ka 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 ka. That's the Tsenkio. Ka is fine notes, and kio means cinco. Yeah, right. So a lot of the Caribbean music has that, and that music came to New Orleans, and a lot of it came via Mexico. I didn't know that there was like a family of teachers that came to New Orleans to teach, and they were very influential in the early development of jazz, which I never knew. So I think that might be what he was referring to. I cannot be 100%, but that Latino tinge, what this author referred to, that's what he was talking about. There was a guy named Gorchak.
Yes, Louis Gottschalk.
Yes, and he was influenced by that, where he actually went to South America or something and died or something. If I'm correct, he got sick, but it was that that type of thing that's prevalent in the early jazz stages. That's my opinion,
Okay.
from what I've read, and heard
Right.
over the years.
Wow. Well, I have to get you to your next assignment, but really fascinating talking to you, and I'm looking forward to your band tonight.
Oh, great.
Do you write out a set list beforehand, of course? and
Oh,
all
yes.
that?
I have a set list, which is in the book. The books were in order. Everything's all set.
Did you ever have to fire anybody?
Reluctantly,
Yeah.
yeah. Most people leave on their own. Not because they're mad or anything, but
Yeah.
because they move or whatever. The only time that I let go of a couple of people was on a recording session. They couldn't quite cut it.
Oh.
And it was like, keep them, be faithful, or look out for my reputation and all my money that I'm spending, which is thousands of dollars.
Yes.
So it was a rough decision, but I had to do what I had to do just to keep the quality of the music up. Also, by having good musicians in the band, that will attract good musicians. If you have mediocrity, good players are not going to want to play with you. So I try and keep as much as possible the levels of musicianship high, so that people will want to play with me. So yes, at least 2 times that I can remember offhand, I've let people go. I did it as tactfully as I could, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why band leaders are not popular. You got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Right.
But, I only do this as a last resort. Okay, that was one more other one, but we had a very bad situation. It was like, okay, it's time.
Yeah. Good.
Because that creates, it's like a cancer. Once it starts with somebody, it can spread. That's when somebody told me. And I said, something that you're right. I got to make a move here. So.
Okay.
But it's only as a last resort.
Right.
I'm not the firing type.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.